Well, good afternoon, everybody, and it's time again for the COPEC Daily Financial Wellness live streaming webcast. Real excited today to have Russ Golowin back, who is our member attorney who does a lot of work with elder care issues, and so definitely happy to have him back. He's pretty much a staple here every Friday with a lot of great topics. So if you have a chance to tune into future programs, he'll be here every Friday and doing also some Financial Wellness Friday programming. As you can see, we have some information as far as our disclosure. That has been up for about a minute or two. So if you have any questions on it, or you would like to see the additional disclosure from the website, it's basically the same thing, talking about COPEC, how the members deal with it, company affiliations, and also because Retirement Strategies is on the board and heavily involved in COPEC, we've got some disclosure on there as well. So we will go ahead, and today, again, like I mentioned before, we have Russ Golowin. So Russ, today we're going to talk about caregiver agreements. We had a really good conversation last week, and they kind of flow into each other a little bit. And so, what are we going to be talking about here today? And kind of a brief overview.
Well, when someone has a health issue, they start needing assistance from somebody else. Usually at home is where that first happens. A lot of times a family member will just pitch in. Many times it's a spouse if they're married, or it could be children, could be someone else, a grandchild, whomever. A lot of times that care happens for years and years until someone has to go into a facility because the caregiver is just no longer able to provide that care. There's such a thing as a caregiver agreement that is a good idea to implement way back when this care starts, in order to put that person in a better financial position later on when they move into a facility and perhaps qualify for Medicaid at that point. So I want to make sure that all the attendees know what this is and understand how it might help be able to preserve some of the family assets.
I want to go back real quick. In a previous conversation, we talked about, trusts, income trust to help protect some of that income from, the eligibility requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a connection with this, or is this more about transfer of wealth as opposed to, because I guess if somebody is applying for Medicaid, this caregiver agreement really isn't needed at that time. It's really more of the transfer of wealth. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
in a general sense.
We're trying to figure out a way to be able to transfer money from one family member to another without facing a Medicaid ineligibility period. In other words, how can I give money to my child without it being treated as a gift by Medicaid? And you can do it through this caregiver agreement, but as we'll discuss, there's certain requirements that you have to go through. So
okay.
If I were gonna give an example, the example would be, mom is, she's advancing in age. She's a little bit frail physically. She needs help getting out of bed, getting dressed, maybe making food. Depending on the situation, she might need help eating, going to the bathroom, things like that. So there's a whole host of things that she might need help with. And maybe she sold her house and moves in with her daughter. And daughter provides care every day, doing all these various different tasks. And many children would do that, of course, without any expectation of being paid. But if we do that, well, we might down the road wish we could go back and implement one of these agreements. So that's an example of where this might come into play. So the question is, what do we do? Should we start paying the daughter to provide this care, or should we not? So that's kind of where this comes in, Jay.
So can you kind of walk through, I guess, you used one example, but how does the actual agreement, how would it work? And maybe define that a little bit more if you could.
Right. So by agreement, I just mean it's a written legal document. It's a contract. The reason this is important is because if you start paying somebody money or giving someone money, Medicaid, they have the right to look back 5 years when you apply for Medicaid at all the money that you spent. And so if they see these transfers or checks being made to a family member, and at that time you say, oh, well, yeah, my daughter provided care for me for the last 5 years, and that's why I give her $3,600 a month. They would say, well, prove it, right? And we don't have anything to prove it if we don't have a written legal agreement signed 5 years ago, along with some other proof that care was actually provided. So there's actually kind of two pieces to it. Number one is the written agreement between mom and daughter that both of them sign. Mom agrees to pay the daughter, I don't know, $15 an hour to care for her. And it's going to be for 8 hours a day or so, whatever fits the situation. And so mom agrees to pay, daughter agrees to provide those services, and that's all put into a legal document. Number two, the daughter is going to want to keep a log of her time that she spent caring for mom. And of course, that it is a bit of work. Doesn't need to be extremely detailed, but you're going to want to say what you did on any particular day and how much time you spent. And so years later, when mom is trying to apply for Medicaid and trying to prove why these transfers or checks to daughter should not be considered a gift of money, we can say, well, look, we agreed in writing that this care would take place and mom would pay. We have proof in this care log showing that daughter did actually provide care. And so those paired together are very successful as long as you have the records and you do it right in enabling mom to give money to daughter for care that she otherwise would have provided for free. And so if we're talking about $15 an hour for 8 hours a day, that's $3,600 a month, or close to $45,000 a year that mom can give to daughter. And there's not going to be any Medicaid penalty for doing that as long as we follow the requirements and have proof that this was done correctly. Does that make sense, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe a good explanation of this is to not lose the opportunity of applying for Medicaid earlier because you had family members help. So for example, you talk about the contract, you talk about the writing down of these notes. If you were to hire a home care agency to come in and care for mom and dad, they're doing this as well, right? They're charging you bills. There's a contract. Their workers are recording what they're doing all the day, so they record all this as well. The point is that if you have a family member that is doing this and they are not doing this type of charging, and your parents might be able to apply in let's say January of 2022, let's say, but because you did this and you're going to care for them anyway, now you might be able to apply 6 months earlier or some number earlier, which is essentially saving quite a bit of money that has to be spent down because you're able to pay a fair and reasonable fee that you would anyway to a family member. And it's just basically bringing a family member to a more organized, accountable situation. Some people I think of if you own a business and you're writing off your mileage on a car, it's the same thing. You need, if you're going to take that deduction, it's fair, but you need to record it and be able to have a reasonable level of proof that that's how it was being used.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, if mom needs care, you can provide, or you can hire in-home caregivers, professionals, and pay them money. Medicaid sees that you wrote a check to, a particular in-home care agency. They're not going to question that. They know you wouldn't give that agency money just because you love them,
Right.
It's just when you have a child providing care, you need to prove that there was some sort of agreement and that care was actually given, because of course it just looks suspicious at first without this documentation basically making it clear that it's not a gift, it's a payment for services. Which actually brings up one important thing I don't want to forget about. One small negative of doing this is, of course, if we are paying for a service, that's taxable income to daughter. So she would have to report that to the IRS as taxable income. Of course, if she was going to provide the care for nothing anyway, daughter isn't really gonna mind paying a little bit of tax on it. But it is a taxable transaction, and in some cases, if the daughter did not pay her tax or report it to the IRS, that is one way that the Medicaid agency could try to claim that it was a gift. So that is an important piece of all of this.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that's a similar issue that when you deal with like babysitters and, and independent contractors who are helping you, you got to be careful with all of that stuff. And especially in this one, when you're going to the government to get help, you want to make sure you got those I's dotted and T's crossed, that you're not back end ruining the plans that you're trying to help do.
That's right.
And in many ways, I'd imagine, Russ, from your experience, most people don't even charge. And the point here is that you can just make sure you're doing it right. It's more about that than it is about people that are, trying to transfer money without doing the service. It's just a matter of, look, you're doing the service, just be paid fairly, and it's better to go, to you for your time and service, because you're still an independent that has, value in your time. So do it properly. If it's going to be spent somewhere, it might as well be spent on you.
Right. This is something that typically people don't even know about. And if in our example, the daughter knew about it, she's going to feel really uncomfortable bringing it up to mom, because daughter doesn't want mom to think that she wants to be paid to care for mom. And so daughter might not bring it up. But if I'm the one that brings it up, it's totally different, because mom says, well, oh my gosh, are you telling me I can pay you and give you money which will protect it from being lost to the cost of nursing home later? Oh my gosh, I'd absolutely want to do that.
Yeah.
It's just that daughter doesn't want it to seem like she wants money. So it's funny, there's kind of a conflict of initial opinions and bringing it up, but we're not doing it because daughter wants to be paid. It's just, if we don't pay daughter, well, if we end up needing to be in a facility, all that money is just going to be spent on care at the facility. So why not pay daughter for the care that she provided and benefit the family at the same time?
Yeah, and this is for. I'm going to ask this actually. Is this for really people that are really truly giving a lot of care and it's taking up what about somebody who takes mom and dad to the store and cares, but it's only 3 hours 3 times a week? Is that something you can still apply, or is it more you got to like you mentioned? Is it like almost like they're living with you, or they're, you're there a lot, or is it could be any number of hours?
It probably could be any number of hours, but the ones that I've done are really once we're substantially caring for that person. I'd say probably at least, 4 or 5 hours a day. It's typically when it comes into play in my experience, but I don't think it necessarily has to.
Right. So can you kind of walk through exactly how the caregiver agreement actually helps protect the assets?
Well, sure. I mean, let's say again, mom sold her house and moves in with daughter, and she sold her house for $100,000. And say that's all the money she has. Well, mom can live with daughter for 5 years, and daughter just provides everything to her. Um, all the care, all the food, whatever mom needs. And then 5 years elapses, and mom has to go to a nursing home. Well, now mom has to spend down $98,000 on her nursing home care. And once she's down to $2,000, she's eligible for Medicaid. So mom's left with $2,000. Everything else went to her cost of care. In the other example, if we do a caregiver agreement when mom moves in with daughter, well, she sold her house, she has $100,000. Over the next 2.5 years, if she's paying daughter $3,600 a month for 8 hours a day of care, well, she's transferred that whole 100,000 to daughter, and then she can go on Medicaid whenever is necessary, and she'll be eligible without having to spend anything else down. So basically, she's given everything she has to daughter. Daughter now has the total amount that's left after paying her income tax. We've protected almost all of mom's money in that example because she was able to give it to her daughter for providing care that daughter probably would have provided at no cost. So that's the I think that's the clearest example of how that might work.
Is it fair to say that if the mother moves in with the daughter, is she able to use some of that money to pay rent too?
Yeah, definitely. Again, you're going to want to have a legal agreement whereby daughter agrees to provide the space in daughter's house and mom agrees to rent it. And of course, you want it to be for a fair market value type of rent. You can't charge a ridiculous amount. But yeah, rent, portion of utilities, even reimbursements for food and other things like that could be permitted. But again, it's all got to be done in writing. It all has to be on the up and up. It's not something you can use to try to hide something or transfer absurd amounts. So again, in writing, it's got to be signed before the care starts to be provided. You can't do it 5 years after the fact and then pay $100,000 all in one fell swoop. It's got to be from the beginning, making regular payments. Lump sums are not looked upon favorably, so you want to avoid those things.
But if let's say that you're, projected to be not necessarily 5 years out, but you've been giving care, you listen to this program, all of a sudden you're like, I've been doing this for 2 years. You can start at any time. You just can't go retroactive is what you're saying.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're just finding out about this, you've already been providing care, might be time to put it into an agreement and just start that care log, start making payments, and then everything from the day you set it up, as long as it's done correctly, should not be considered a gift when an application is filed.
And it's interesting because there's some general concepts out there about I think people are nervous about, wait a minute, we're taking advantage of the system, let's say, or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. How would you respond to that? Because I think a lot of people either don't know about it or they feel like, what's using tax benefits versus, doing something illegal or something like that. I assume there's people that are kind of like, oh, I don't want to do it because I think, what if we get caught? Well, what are you getting caught about or something like that? It's these laws are there for a purpose, to make it available for people to care for each other and be able to manage this appropriately, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would tell people if something makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to do it, right? So
That's a
you
great point.
always have that option. Number two, we're not hiding anything. We're just following the rules that are established. Um, and so it is a lot like taking tax deductions. You don't have to take a tax deduction. You don't have to um, do anything in a particular way as long as it's legal. So you can absolutely say, look, I know that I'm entitled to create a caregiver agreement and pay my daughter for providing care for me, but I don't want to do it. And that's your right. But for people that do see the value in it, it can be a very valuable solution, and it is there for a reason. It's there because the state, the government understands that um, people that are providing care, especially to people in this situation, um, they're putting their career on hold. They're foregoing income of their own, and so by providing for their loved one, they should be entitled to be paid, not only because it impacts their life, but also because it's keeping this other person out of a facility, and that might make that spot open up for someone else that doesn't have a family member that can provide care, or a whole host of other reasons. But yeah, I mean, I typically say, look, if something I'm suggesting to you as an alternative doesn't make you comfortable, you certainly don't have to do it. I'm just advising you of what your options are.
So bottom line, and real quick for any of the attendees, if you do have some questions, please send those on, and we can definitely address those. But bottom line is, just because you're a family member does not mean that you should not or could not be treated as a viable expense when it comes to the process of the spend down to apply for Medicaid. And as long as you follow the rules, it is a great way to properly assess and take care of that variable. And it very well could save you, tens of, thousands of dollars if you do this. And, I'd imagine if you're somebody who, let's say one of your parents or loved one has dementia, or maybe a stroke, that might be a long time situation. Think about that, because if you're doing this for years and years and years, well, up to 5 years, right? That's quite a bit of money that can be addressed and properly paid if you're giving that care and taking care of that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually another rule in there. If daughter moves in with mom in mom's house, and daughter provides care that keeps her out of a facility for 2 years, then the law allows mom to transfer that house to daughter without any Medicaid penalty at all. So
Oh, okay.
again,
Wow.
yeah, the state recognizes that that is valuable care. She kept mom out of a facility, moved out of her home to be with mom, so she should be entitled to that house. Now you want to make sure that it's approved by the caseworker and things like that, but there is a rule, so be aware of that. A caregiver child that moves into parents' house and lives there for the 2 years, the house can be transferred to that caregiver child. So that's another really big benefit when it works out.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is obviously really interesting discussion. There's a lot of need out there, I know. And unfortunately, too many times people don't seek additional advice, and they just kind of go with what either the counselor tells them. Here's, you have to wait this long. They're not going to give you the kind of advice as somebody that is representing you, correct? And
That's
so
right.
it might be something to really consider.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is, always try to plan ahead. Just see what your current situation is. You can talk to an elder law attorney about these things and say, hey, Mom's condition just started to decline a bit. What should we know about our options here? And hopefully there'll be a discussion of caregiver agreements, moving into mom's home, maybe creating trusts, maybe buying long-term care insurance, or a whole host of other things that most people wouldn't know about unless they've been through the situation before. So yeah, seek out information, meet with somebody. It could be for no cost, or it could be for a couple $100 or something like that, but at least you'll know what's coming and what some of the options might be that could work for you and your family.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Russ. Appreciate it. I think we'll go ahead and continue to have a lot of great discussions here. This is really important for everybody attending. Appreciate you joining us, and we hope you have a safe and great weekend this weekend coming up, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week. And Russ, I think we'll be seeing you next Friday, and take care and have a great weekend, everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.